Hello, hello.
Hey,
It's a day of the week again. We will not disclose which day of the week it is, but what we will disclose is that this is Biweekly cast, episode number 46. Hosts are still here, still the same. I'm Dima Malenko.
I'm Slava, and today we'll talk about procrastination. But before we do, there is a bit of follow-up.
Yes, I wanted to try to come up with a joke about talk today about procrastination and see something like see you tomorrow, something along those lines, but I didn't manage to. So I'll have to do the follow up thing. I think I would like to start with apology. Last episode I spoke very diminutively of the whole fantasy genre, and I tried to crack a joke about Lord of the Rings. I looked a little bit closer into that. And this is a lesson why you should probably not speak diminutively of things you know little about, something along those lines. I looked a little bit deeper into kind of history around Lord of the Rings and this whole thing. And I definitely underestimate the amount of work that went into that. Apparently, Tolkien spent like 6 years working on this whole universe, and with that you can only trust that details there were thought through. He created something along the lines of more than 10 different languages to support this world. He was a master of language and philology and stuff like that. So I take all what I said back. I now don't regret saying this, but I think it was a good lesson for me, and maybe a good lesson for others, not to speak too confidently about stuff that you don't know too much about.
Maybe one day you'll give him a chance as a reader.
I'm tempted a little bit. I still like the fantasy, even though some might say that this is not too different from sci-fi. Somehow that's not. Let's put it this way: not my first choice for reading, but maybe I'm definitely now tempted and interested in learning more about this, his whole process and thinking and how it came to be. Maybe a little bit more than the book, the epos itself. And one other bit of follow-up also related to books. After we discussed that, I was surprised by seeing Starter Villain in the list of nominees for Hugo Award for 2024, and decided, who was the winner, and check it out. So I bought that book, I listened to it. I can definitely say that to my taste, it has a stronger story out there, but nonetheless, like it did have that give me that Oscar impression that you were describing, where it might be attuned, maybe too much, and it's difficult to say whether it's just tuning to the public agenda or just using the things that are not using the things on the public agenda, but using telling the story which kind of overlaps and interweaves with the public agenda. But it definitely had this feel that it maybe consciously or subconsciously trying to hit the notes or chords with the public, maybe a bit too much. But nonetheless, that one was, I think, a better story, and there I think that's fine that it was a winner.
So basically, Hugo Award also got rehabilitated after.
That's my literally summary from past couple of weeks.
All right, that will do. So traditionally, before we jump into the topic, there is a theme corner coming,
Right.
and basically, I would like to cut the bigger themes, Triennial of Glide and Year of Meaning, and jump straight to the Fall of Nucleus, which is a brand new thing. My previous one was Summer of Mindfulness, which I consider not very successful. Like I haven't done nearly a quarter of things I wanted, and I will keep my efforts, but I would like to change the focus a bit and try something more focusing. So the fall of nucleus is going to be about steadily cutting off a number of activities from my routines, and off a number of projects, a number of areas of responsibilities where I used to be responsible. I'm already in the process. We've promoted one of our colleagues to COO position, and I'm sure
Stepping away, maybe?
Yeah. A number of projects and areas where I used to be. And, people say that when you are a CEO, you basically start as sales, then you're responsible for everything, and then later you're sales again. So that looks like my future right now. But there is still a lot of work to do and a lot of projects to cut and a lot of priorities to set. And this fall will show if I manage to do that.
This is interesting. The way you described it, when with cutting some of the activities and so on, one may describe this as focusing, right? Trying to focus on the smaller, fewer things to maybe do them better or with greater intensity. What makes you call this fall of nucleus maybe rather than more prosaic fall of focus?
Well, firstly, I've already had a winter of focus, which is enough. Secondly, nucleus means that it's the core things, not just fewer things, because you can have fewer, or like the year of less in cortex variation. But I think that we all basically go through a number of periods where we get more stuff on our table and then we try to get rid of some stuff. And this is an ongoing process over and over. And the thing is not just to do less, but to do what is the most important, what is in the core of who I am and what I'm doing.
Does it include an element of searching for what that nucleus is, or are you already kind of confident enough now that this is my core? I should just get rid of the stuff on the periphery of that.
There are basically two layers. There is an obvious non-core activities that I know that are non-core, and then there are too many things that I still qualify as core, which probably should get re-examined and re-evaluated. And I think that the first iteration is going to be cutting off some obvious stuff, and then the second part of the fall should be dedicated to less obvious things.
Makes sense. All right. So we'll be curious to hear about your progress.
We'll see.
The fall of nucleus.
But today is another topic, and this is going to be procrastination, which is one of our favorite topics, I believe. We've had a number of podcasts and shows related to this, and here is one more.
Right. And I like how you call it creative procrastination. It's not just average procrastination. It's just very, very specific and very non-negative sort of procrastination, maybe. Let's see how it goes.
I'm fine with a number of other types of procrastination. I've been working with Ukrainian army for a while, and they say that if you ignore a task for 2 days, chances are it's not going to be a task later. And in many management things, it also happens like this. Like if you just ignore an issue, one day it stops being an issue and you probably don't have to do anything about it. But speaking about creative procrastination, I would say that in this case, I really struggle. And right now I'm working on strategic thinking e-learning program. And like I can't get over this block. I've been attempting all the popular techniques like social commitment, decompose into chunks and baby steps and all the other things, and like it just doesn't work. So I wanted to take this specific example and look through a number of broader questions, so maybe I could find some resolution and get this thing done.
All right, yeah, that's a tall order, but let's try.
I've picked some definitions which I think should basically precisely show what I mean by procrastination. And according to a dictionary. I don't remember which one.
I wrote those.
Procrastination is.
I didn't write them, of course. I read those definitions, and they're interesting. They make some of them make shed some new light on the matter, which I don't think I systematically considered previously.
And what was new? Yeah,
the definitions we have in our notes is that procrastination is an act of unnecessarily and voluntarily delaying and postponing something. And then the second thing you have is that according to researchers, some major cognitive distortions that lead to academic procrastination are that students overestimate how much time that have left, how motivated they will be, and how long certain activities will take to complete, and assume that they need to be in the right frame of mind. I think somehow this is the first time I saw these things either outlined together, and I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That this is a lot of that describes a lot of what's going on in procrastinating situations.
Yeah, and I really like this classification because it basically describes 9 out of 10 cases where I procrastinate. You could probably tag most of my procrastination cases and say, like, well, mostly I overestimate how much time I have left, and then how long certain activities will take. I'm usually more optimistic because when I plan, I'm rested and relaxed, and then the life comes and it's a bit different. But I also like the separation to passive procrastination and active procrastination. I think it's, again, according to some kind of researchers, they say that passive procrastinators are people who delay tasks because they have trouble making decisions and acting on them. It's just the process of being stuck. While active procrastinators, they delay tasks purposefully. Like they know that I'm not going to do that. Not because I don't want, but it's pressure. Like I don't feel like. I think that in most cases, know how to get around active procrastination. Like I know how to get myself to do things after I've decided what I want to do and I have the task written down. I may face some difficulties, but usually it's easier to overcome when I have the decision on the table. And the strategic thinking course is probably the first case in years when it's kind of hard for me to overcome it. So I wanted to get down and talk about it a bit more.
Let's see. I think that this one is interesting. The active versus passive classification and the description we have there. Somehow, to me, they feel somewhat unfair or being on a different kind of planes a little bit. And let me see if I can explain that and if you would agree with that. So with passive procrastinators, we say that they delay the task because they have trouble making decisions or acting on them. But this description presumes that those passive procrastinators, they at least try to make progress, and then because they have trouble making decisions and acting on them, they maybe don't get enough progress towards the goal, which to me kind of puts this into the active category. Whereas the active procrastinators, the definition says they delay the task purposefully because working under pressure allows them to feel challenged and motivated. So they expressly switch themselves into passive mode, waiting for the star to rise or something like that. At which point I would question, like, if you are an active procrastinator and you need pressure, just put the deadline forward or maybe back, or whatever, however we measure backward and forward on the deadline. Like, say the deadline, I'll do it by the end of the week, and immediately feel challenged and motivated and do that. So that's how I think that the active procrastinator definition that we have is somewhat backward because it's anything but active.
All right. Actually, this is probably not the most important part here because you could name them passive or active or vice versa, and it doesn't really change the intentionality behind them, that some people actually get themselves into such situations. And I'm one of these people today because I basically set a deadline for myself, which I'm not going to meet. And usually, it doesn't usually happen to me. But before we get into my specific case, could you tell me how often do you procrastinate on work-related tasks?
Maybe quite often. I don't know. I read this question in the notes, and I also thought that it is for each and every one of us. It's, I think, difficult to be objective about ourselves in the past, and we may want to say no, like I'm super organized, like everything happens on time, and so on and so forth. But on a serious note, I think I procrastinate quite a bit with different kinds of procrastination. Sometimes it may be strategic procrastination, like you described. It can be creative procrastination, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm very familiar with the.
This is basically usually very dependent on the types of tasks I'm doing. And three most common things that I know, it's conflict-related things, like when there is a difficult conversation and I'm not very good at resolving conflicts, and I probably would procrastinate preparation for such meetings, difficult performance review calls, or something along those lines where it's going to be tough, especially when I'm tired. Like it's just unbearable. The second related to public speaking. Even though I'm quite good at public speaking, I delay presentation slides and prep to the last possible moment. And the third one is related to writing. Like whenever there is writing activity and I have to write a text, and this text is complex, this is like the third biggest category. And whenever I have to do this long writing activity, I will probably procrastinate it. These are three things I knew about myself before the strategic thinking e-learning course, because now I have the fourth section here. It's video recordings for something longer than 3 minutes.
I think, and knowing all of this, did you try to take kind of steps to guard against some of those traps for yourself?
Yeah, like I basically don't do writing these days. I've totally switched to podcasts, and right now my marketing team can do writing for me. Like we can run a number of podcasts. They can get the ideas from the podcasts and make the articles and the text that they want. They're way better than me at this, and I think probably it's because of Biweekly. Way more relaxed, and I can talk openly about things that matter to me in a conversational way. But when it becomes academic and like here, this is what I faced getting this PhD application. Like so much writing, so much formal requirements to where the number of page should be, how big the text should be. Like these things, they just like, no, I'm not made for this. The other thing that, in terms of public speaking and other kind of activities, I usually try to get with a team there, with event managers, community managers who keep me deadlined in terms of when I should submit the presentation, when is the rehearsal, and it kind of makes me more prepared than if I'm just by myself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what you said about writing, I can resonate so much. Exactly recently I was thinking again that when it is so much sort of easier and maybe more comfortable, maybe even more natural for me to explain ideas while talking, I find that if a person asks me a question about, let's say, the systems we're developing and whatnot, I can like right there on the spot kind of come up and provide with, in my estimate, a kind of good description of what's going on to answer their question and equip them with some additional kind of information and knowledge to allow them to move forward on what they're doing. But when I sit and try to write that down, I kind of get bogged down, and it is more difficult that way. And I also wonder, well, in this situation, this maybe this would be of relevance to what we are discussing, that with writing, and I wonder for myself, if it is kind of a psychological kind of block situation where I somehow tell myself I'm not good at writing, or it takes me too much time or too much energy, and therefore when I sit to write, it takes too much time and too much energy. And if I maybe persuaded myself that no, like writing is as easy or maybe only slightly more difficult than explaining something verbally, things would be different.
I probably could agree unless I had this journaling experience, because I journal quite well and I like the way I do it. But in work related context, I think it's hard for me to switch writers and editors roles because I'm very good at editing. And when you write, you have to block it. And it's really hard for me to block it because my editor's mindset is there pretty much all the time. And like I write something like, oh, no, like that, I should have considered that, or like, what's the link with this, or how does it relate to something? And I it just kind of blocks me from writing more.
I can totally see that, because then when, say myself, when I'm writing, I'm trying to kind of sweat over each sentence, which is not entirely productive, because people say that you should be in kind of writing versus editing mode or something along those lines. Just throw it out and then edit later. There is one other element I think I wanted to explore with you, with regards to this kind of creative procrastination thing, and it may be related to blocks and how stuff happens. I found this with myself, that working on certain ideas, when the idea first comes to my mind, and it can be in, shall we say, in somewhat altered states of mind, not because of substances, but like when you are running, or you like physiologically in a slightly different state, the brain operates slightly differently. And I found that sometimes when I get the idea, it may seem or feel kind of viscerally feel so bright and great. Yes, if only this can be done, this will change so much things and it will be so great in the end. And then you get home, you take a note, and then a couple of days later you maybe start working on this. Things are not as bright. You start working, it turns out to be harder, and you long for that feeling of greatness and brightness of the idea, which is gone, and it kind of slows me down. It starts kind of that feeling of self-doubt and stuff like that, which triggers that procrastination and desire to find the right state of mind to work on it, which is not productive at all. And I'm also now trying to be a bit more, for myself at least, to be more cautious of that, and conscious and cautious of that, and take measures to help that somehow. Do you
That
feel anything like that?
I've heard these stories from many of my friends and colleagues, but this usually doesn't happen to me because either get to some long-term things that I enjoy, and the pleasure is the like debates. I've been debating for quite a while. I like this biweekly. Like I really like this podcast and the way we run it, and it's just the pleasure. Did I know what it's going to feel like when we started? No, but we've multiple times retrospectively looked back and like confirmed that things are going fine. But all the other things, they are totally under my control, and I choose to do them, and I usually don't do them longer than half a year. Like most of the activities that I do today, I'm not going to do in 6 months. Like most of the meetings that I have this week are not going to happen in 2025. Things are very changeable in this regard. That's why I'm, even if I dislike something, or if something is not as I imagined it, I still know it's temporary. And that kind of makes it way easier. I know that people who are stuck on a specific job or position or with a specific team, they have much more impact of this factor, because they imagine things would go one way when they don't go this way and they can't change them. It can become really frustrating and basically doesn't drive you as much as the idea of something. But I think that's not really my case. But I can totally feel you.
How
Karen.
how would you know when you get when you maybe moving slower than you think you should? Do you have like when you set out with this course? Did you set out with a plan and kind of milestones, and then you feel like, oh, I'm not hitting those?
Yeah, and it basically like I get this perfectionism blackouts when I know that I have to just basically do a basic 3-minute recording to test the video. It doesn't even matter what I'm going to say there. We are basically checking the lights and the sound, and that's it. And it takes me an hour to do a 3-minute video, which is not okay. Like, it's just a draft. Like, I'm not recording anything. Why would it take an hour? And then when I'm preparing something and I purposefully choose to do something else, like maybe before I start the recording, I should look through the slides once again. Maybe I should order this mic that makes it way better and wait for a few days until it arrives. And all these other like delayers that I purposefully or maybe unconsciously create for myself, not to do the thing that I'm either afraid of or I'm confused with, or as you say, discombobulated. I don't know. It could go very differently, but these are true indicators that like I'm procrastinating.
Makes sense. And
I wanted to ask whether there are any types of tasks that you tend to procrastinate, except for writing.
writing probably is the biggest one. A lot of there are different things that I do that involve writing in one shape or form, so that affects quite a lot of what I do. And sometimes another thing, another situation might be that I would have an idea or vision for a longer term thing, and I would know exactly, well, at least I would think I know exactly what's the first step to take there, but because that first step needs to be a part of a bigger thing, tend to kind of procrastinate it, taking that step, waiting for the vision to be documented for this whole big thing to kind of justify taking the step, and so on. So there is another that happens to me sometimes.
And when you actually procrastinate, are you these kind of nerdy procrastinators who's like, oh no, there's one more thing we have to get, or guilty pleasure procrastinator who's like, what's YouTube saying about something, and just black out for another hour? What are the indicators for you that you procrastinate?
I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I would want to say that maybe I'm more a bit of a nerdy procrastinator. I would find another important and very urgent thing that needs to be done right now, because otherwise the world is going to be on fire, and therefore I cannot work on this bigger project or whatever it might be. Sometimes it can be that, oh, I let me take 5 minutes for myself and do something, and then hopefully not an hour, hopefully a little bit sooner you wake up and say, oh wow, it's been a lot more than 5 minutes and I've been doing nothing.
Basically brings us to the question, and what are your procrastination activities? Like, how do you procrastinate apart from switching to other tasks?
Yeah, I switch to other tasks. Like the common thing for me would be, common theme at least, for me would be things related to cleaning or something along those lines. So even like at home, and I need to do something, and I look at my shelf over here. Oh, there's so much stuff on it. It's so messy. Let me clean it up. It will put me in the right mood. I can then start working on this thing. And similar happens in some other cases. Let's say at work, and you start working on a bigger thing, then someone comes to you with a question, and you see, oh, like there is this little tiny thing over here that is messed up. Let me do a quick little refactoring over here so that things are going to get better, and so on and so forth, without making proper evaluation and decision. Is it really worth to sacrifice that bigger thing for this smaller problem, even if it is a real problem, which sometimes it isn't?
I think I do most of the things that you described, and I can also take something from a to-do list that I was not going to do. Like, I have to get this package from Nova Post. Like, why now? Like, you planned to do it in the evening during the walk. Like, why would you do it right at 11 a.m. when you have scheduled to do this task? Like,
Right.
I think that usually this is an indicator that I'm afraid. Like, this is the fear because I stop thinking straight in these cases. When I just reprioritize or do something, this is usually not the fear. This is usually uncertainty. Like, I'm not sure how to do, or I don't know how to do something, and I need more time to think. And usually when I switch to another task, still on the background, I could be thinking about this activity and it works for me. But when I run away, and like basically it's a panic mode, and this panic mode is related to the fear, and this fear is usually not based on just uncertainty. It's something wild. Like, I could be afraid of succeeding. I could be afraid of even getting something done, which is very uncomfortable to accept sometimes, because, like, yes, I chose to do this and now I'm afraid. It's not the most pleasant thing to know about yourself.
This resonates with me quite a lot, and I think there was a thing that I wanted to get us to maybe, and I think this would be as good time as any. The idea that for myself, I with writing and similar stuff, when I was thinking why that happens, I think that it may be related to kind of an act of kind of commitment and finalization of something. So when you are to kind of produce something and send it to the world and for other people to see, you kind of are fixing that. It feels like you cannot change that afterwards, and you might be kind of judged or whatever else based on that piece, and you want to make this judgment as positive as possible, and therefore you kind of always doubt and second guess yourself and find ways to delay that moment when you have to commit and sort of open yourself to
Even weirder than it should be, because we do a lot of public communications, like social media, presentations, podcasts. Like, we intentionally go and share our thoughts out there, but then in some cases it just becomes really awkward and uncomfortable. And specifically here, like, why can I record podcasts about strategy and not be able to record a 6-minute video?
And I think what I think helps me a little bit, and what I'm trying to do more intentionally and systematically, is bringing in other people, in a sense. When I do get into that kind of emotional dip, or like things are not as good as they should be, and that everything is in vain, it's going to be a failure and stuff like that, knowing that in past examples, in the end of the day, it was all right, it was great sometimes. So it is a temporary thing, and I feel like I benefit from some kind of a positive feedback from the boost that I can get from a positive feedback. So I try to intentionally, even though it sounds and feels cringy a little bit, to bring people and say like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Like, what do you think, and stuff. And more often than not, I don't remember a case when people would say, oh, this is all crap, and then it's not worth anything. Instead, the feedback was positive, encouraging, and stuff like that. So I try to get that to boost my progress.
Well, I think you could also confidently say that you pick the right people for this case, that people you trust and people who don't tend to be very sarcastic and negative about other people's work. When I'm confident about something, I have a few friends who are very skeptical and have strong critical thinking skills, and I talk to them about the ideas, I challenge my thoughts. But when I'm not confident, like, I just don't go there. I go to people who support me, and they give me feedback for the first like iterations, and then when I regain my confidence, I can come back and get more critical response. So my level of confidence does matter here. And basically, we've already started discussing the question how you get yourself out of procrastination. And I suggest that we switch it into two parts, social and internal, like something you can do yourself and something that is related to other people. Getting feedback is one thing, and deadlines or commitments is probably the other. Sharing some part of responsibility or work with someone is the third that comes to my mind. And that's pretty much it. Like, I can't think of anything else how other people could help get me out of this mode.
People, I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. You get people on the inside to give you some feedback and hopefully positive boost. You can get an ally who would support you and share the responsibility a little bit, or kind of get a partner in crime, basically, to be full in on you with something. Indeed, it is difficult to come up with something else. On the internal side, I think one thing we didn't talk about is this whole idea. It's easier said than done, but some time ago I picked up this idea that it's better to do, when you have a deadline on something bigger, it is better to do the first crappy version of this thing as quickly as you can, so that you can have all the time afterwards to fix and improve and iterate, rather than try to lay out perfect plan and so on and so forth, and spend a lot of time doing that only to produce crappy version in whatever short amount of time left there before deadline. And I try as much as I can. I don't know, it's rationally, as I said, it's easier said than done to follow this principle, but at least that's what I'm trying to do as much as I can. Kind of try have a complete thing, complete version, even if it's, well, I'm saying complete version even if it's incomplete, but I guess you maybe can get a sense of what I'm trying to say here. Say maybe if there is a presentation, say there will be a slide with XYZ without actually doing that slide with XYZ, or section with XYZ. Have that and iterate from there, rather than sweat over that XYZ slide without getting the rest of the presentation at least out.
That one of the challenges that I have is switching my mindset from one mode to another. And to get this MVP or first little thing out, you basically still have to give up this editor's mindset and get into the writer's mindset. In our case, stop thinking what the end product is going to look like and just start doing something and see how it goes, and then improve or change it afterwards, which makes total sense if you can actually get yourself and to do that. This is named know in doing gap, like when you know what should be done but you don't do that thing. And I was thinking before our podcast on recording, how do I actually get over this know in doing gap? And one of the practices that I took from Yulia Kudina was the gratitude note. I have a note in my phone where I have copies of feedback about my work from various people. Like, that could be messages from social media, comments on YouTube videos that I make, etc., where people basically give supportive feedback. And it's an overdose. It's not just like a single person that I'm asking about a specific task, but I can just scroll through a few pages picked with things that I've done well. I think, all right, like, if I manage to do that, maybe I'll handle this one too. And these seem to be the most powerful. At least everything I have done so far on this e-learning course, I did with this note. Like I would scroll it out and then I would do something. I would scroll it down and then I would do something else.
It's a popular technique. Now that you described it, it sort of seems obvious, but somehow I didn't hear about this previously and didn't think of it myself. Right? That's a good one.
Probably the other thing that internally worked for me but didn't work here is breaking the task into smaller chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Because with this course, now I have just a set of 6 tasks that I procrastinate. Like, all right, I can't get even the first one done. It's not that it's easier. Like, I knew it's going to be the first one out of this bigger task. I see all the 5 that I'm still procrastinating. And in this case, it frustrates me more. So what I did is I rolled back. Like, I stopped decomposing this. I deleted all the other things because now I don't see the full scope of things I will have to do after, but I can focus on just the first task and then I'll decide what to do. Like I basically simplified the scope to a specific step, not to see the next steps, but it's kind of cheating and my mind adapted after first 2 iterations. And now when I put it on the backlog, I know that like, no, it's not that easy.
I think I use, or I found working for me something similar. There is also a metaphor for that I saw when I was a child, and the idea would be to start with task or something or an idea that really kind of resonates and excites me. Sometimes it can be when working on a presentation, let's say, I would have an idea for, oh, I can see this great slide related to this topic. So it definitely should be there in the presentation. I'm not too certain which part of the presentation, how it's going to relate to something else, but this being a crystallization point, I say, all right, I'll start working on this. I'll create the slides and then start building stuff around that. Sometimes it does help me to get out of that creative block. And the metaphor for that, which I saw once, was back in the day when we were doing a renovation in our apartment. One of the things to be done there was to put that ceramic kind of tiling on the walls in the kitchen, like how people do that. And when I saw a master, I don't know, like the craftsman who came to do that for us, one might expect that he would, like naively, you would start at the walls, right? Because this is where the natural beginning of this thing is. You need to cover the wall with those tiles. You start at the left or like whatever edge of the wall and you do that. But instead what he did is he started in the middle, because the idea was that you need things to be kind of lined up and so on and so forth. And the edges and the walls are not always perfectly rectangular and stuff like that. So in order to get better overall result, you start in the middle and then work out the edges in the end because they're somewhat less important than anything else. And I thought that, oh, that's such an interesting thing to kind of to start where it makes sense and work out the rest of the stuff as you go. And I think it does, at times it does help me to find that nucleus, for the lack of a better word, around which to start building this stuff, even though sometimes it may be that this initial thing will not make its way into the final product, but it was useful as a starting point to get things going.
Makes a lot of sense. And how to get this metaphor to my case, and actually not starting from the zero videos and introductions and everything else, but something that I feel most confident about. Like nobody tells me that I have to do the content step by step, unit by unit. I can just do unit 3 that I feel like doing. Interesting. And the other thing that I probably haven't used often enough is switching the context. I did it when I had to write a big piece and prepare for this veteran initiative. I just asked my friends to book a meeting room in a co-working space for me. And in the morning, the first thing I went is I had my breakfast and I went there and I spent 6 hours in this meeting room doing things that I came there to do. Because when you're at your usual place, there are a lot of distractions and habits and things that get you in a specific mode. Like, even though I like my three displays and three screens, they are not helping me here. And if I can just get this tiny laptop, or just like take your phone with you and record everything you want in a specific place, and that should be fine. But it's good in theory. I haven't done it enough. Like, I think this is something like I could rent a studio basically and spend half a day in the studio recording, but something stopped me from doing that.
I agree. This is so powerful. Switching context and kind of making it difficult for old habits and old routines to distract you. Make it such that it's like when you need to do something new, doing something old is easy because you're already used to doing that, and you need to kind of level the playing field for those things, for old and new things, by moving yourself into the new context. And then doing old thing is as difficult as doing the thing that you need to do, which makes it easier for the new important thing to win and to get you.
Yeah, especially when there is no shelter that you have to clean because it's not your shelter.
Yeah, for sure.
The thing I wanted
other thing, and
Karen.
there is this question, and that you put how to prevent procrastination related to creative tasks, and I don't know how to exactly do that, but I find it very useful to return to the idea that at least I got from the book we read back in the day, which was called The Confidence Gap. And the idea there was that you get confidence not by putting yourself in the right state of mind, but you get confidence by doing things. And if you've done something, you get a little bit more confidence that you can do it next time. And I try to employ this thing to not prevent, but maybe to overcome procrastination, especially when it is related to creative tasks, and especially for creative tasks that are repeatable, sort of, that you do like this note on something today, and you can do a different note on something else next week, and you just need to get a little bit more confidence to read or write and share those notes, and this can help prevent procrastination going forward on the same kind of task, sort of.
Mm-hmm. And probably the last thing from my side would be having bigger time slots that works for me. Because when, for instance, I have just 2 hours in between calls, chances are I'm not going to do anything creative or serious in this 2 hour slot. Like when I have a time block for 4 hours, that's way more realistic. And if these 4 hours are the first thing in the morning or the last thing during the day, that also increases the chance, like when it's not blocked by 2 other things, by 2 meetings or some other activities. And the thing is that it doesn't happen very often. Like, I don't write very much and I don't do these video recordings every day. It's a very occasional activity for me. And I think that planning all these things in advance and getting them into the plan could really help me out, because right now I use them as an emergency technique. Like, I've already committed, I've already set deadlines, I already feel guilty, and probably just getting myself a reminder that next time I commit to doing something like that, I should probably get this extra time, extra support, extra room for maneuvers when I need it.
I could not agree more. Giving yourself space to do stuff, it kind of it just helps to just to move, and to move faster. Like here in the UK and in London, on the roads, we have different means of controlling speed, and one of the, especially in residential areas, there would be kind of a regular street, but in the beginning and in the end of the street, there would be gates which are very narrow. So you literally have to slop and crawl through them, because otherwise you risk damaging your car. And I think this is also a metaphor for what you were describing. If you give yourself only so much time, it is difficult to move stuff through. Whereas if you allow yourself a little bit more room for maneuvering and doing some extra stuff, it generally can make things easier and hopefully allow them to move ever so slightly faster.
We seem pretty smart when we discuss this meta thing, but I guess we'll see if we are that smart in about 2 weeks, because by then it's going to be your episode, and I probably will have a piece of follow-up for that conversation, and it's going to be either I've done something or I haven't done anything.
Yeah. We can say, like, in 2 weeks, welcome to the next episode called the Knowing Doing Gap or something along those lines. Yeah. It's so true. It's easy. It's so much easier to say how things should be rather than kind of leave what you say.
We'll see if I handle that.
And I hope there's are going to be 2 good weeks, and the follow-up is going to be great.
Well, people say hope for the best and prepare for procrastination.
All right. Anyway, good weeks.
Good weeks.